Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Parece bom demais pra ser verdade, né? Pois é. No ensino técnico do Senac, isso é possível. É ensino médio junto com formação técnica, que acontece durante os 3 anos. Lá, eles usam metodologia para projetos, desenvolvendo competências como resolução de problemas, pensamento crítico e colaboração, além de valores éticos e sustentáveis. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to a 7th consecutive victory green hour as the Philadelphia Eagles fly west to Los Angeles and defeat the Rams 37-20 at Lincoln Financial Field West as the Philadelphia Eagles fans took over SoFi Stadium, and it sounded like it was a home game. I'm your host, LJ Herron. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, I didn't even mention the star of the game, which I will, but that game was awesome to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it on very low volume because my daughter was sleeping in my arms for almost the entirety of the game. But I mean, I could tell with the subtitles on that there was a lot of frequent talk about how loud the crowd was in favor of the Eagles. So I trust that it was very much like a home game for the Eagles. And I mean, it feels great to talk about a 7th straight victory green hour. Oh, how the narratives and tides have turned.
This feels a lot different than last year's 10-1 start. This is a lot. This is feeling more like 2022 when we made the Super Bowl run compared to last year when we were 10-1, and then at this time is when it started to go all downhill. But as always, before we jump in to the game, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHerrell54. Follow the Eagles Pin Pull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pin Pull Network. Leave a review for the show. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there are things you want us to talk about. We try to, we do our own little version. We're not the analytical way. We like to just give our own spin to things. And then if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts on the game, who the MVP of the game was. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. And your, thoughts going forward. How do your feelings of the team, the Brandon Graham injury, that's going to be a big, big loss for the Eagles. Let us know how you guys feel on the Eagles 37-20 victory. So look, Connor, I've been an Eagles fan for a long time. I vaguely remember Ricky Waters. I remember Deuce Staley's 201-yard game against the Cowboys on Pickle Juice Day in the early 2000s. I remember Brian Westbrook. I remember Shady McCoy in the Snow Bowl. I have never, ever, ever seen anything like what Saquon Barkley did yesterday in an Eagles uniform. I saw Adrian Peterson do it with the Vikings. I think he had 296 yards or something crazy. Jamal Lewis also had a big game. But in an Eagles uniform, Saquon Barkley, 255 yards rushing, 302 yards of total offense. And these weren't hard runs. He wasn't getting touched on a lot of those runs. I say it all the time, or he has said it. There are some games where he could get 25 carries and he could play a game the next day just because it's the type of hits that you take. There's other games that he'll get 10 to 15 carries and it feels like he was in a fight and it takes him most of the week to get healthy, to get back on his feet. Both 70-yard touchdown runs, he didn't get touched. There were multiple runs where he was running through holes that a Mack truck that could go through. And it was somebody in the secondary that was tripping him up by his feet, barely hitting him. He got hit once where I think he just got hit in the midsection. Obviously, if a guy gets hit in that part, it's going to hurt a little bit. But other than that, Saquon Barkley did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do, and it didn't matter what the Rams did because he owned that game.
Yeah, I mean, he was the star of the game on all sides of the football. I mean, it was such a dominant showing, like definitely the most dominant showing this year by any offensive player. It was unbelievable to watch. And like you said, like even if it looked like he was going to get hit, he just always has the moves. He's always got a stutter step. He's always got a spin move. He's always got something that leaves him untouched. 156 out of his 255 yards were after contact, and I don't even know where most of that contact came from because he was barely getting touched.
Those two, the 70-yarder at the beginning of the third quarter, unless he got touched like at the very run, I didn't think anybody touched him. And the 72-yarder, I didn't think anybody touched him. That's 142 yards right there. So after contact, I don't know where the contact was on either of those runs.
Neither do I. I mean, it was such just a dominant, impressive that he just did what he wanted type of showing. And I know on Get Up this morning, Rex Ryan referenced the last time a offense had this explosive type of plays. You had to go back 75 years, I think he said, in Eagles history, back to the 50s, to find an offense that had this type of explosion all as much as they do. And almost 100% of the explosion, I guess not 100, but like I'd say 75% of that explosion coming from the running back. Because we do have the A.J. Brown for an explosive play a game, or Devontae for an explosive play or two a game. But Saquon Barkley is, and I think an explosive play, I think it's 15 yards or 10.
I think it's a 10-yard rush and a 20-yard pass.
15 pass, maybe. Yeah, you might be right. It's just mass. But like to get 10 yards nowadays as a running back, there's a reason teams don't pay running backs or don't feel they should. I mean, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley are a lesson, and maybe you should consider paying. And Josh Jacobs. Jacobs is being overshadowed massively because Barkley and Henry are just having
a good year.
Meteoric seasons. But I mean, beyond that, it was just so impressive to watch Saquon Barkley last night. And like we knew heading into this, one of the things was get the lead early. Of course, both teams kind of stumbled out of the gate. And then as soon as once the Eagles take control, they don't seem to look back anymore. At the start of the season,
imagine if they actually were able to score early. Like these games would be no contest. And everybody's talking about the amount of touches that Saquon is getting. He had 20. He almost averaged 10 yards a carry. He literally 26 carries, 255 yards. That's pretty much 10 yards a carry. Like that is insane. But like the Eagles are going to get to a point in this with the schedule. Maybe not this week because the Ravens are a tough team, but like potentially the Panthers. You should be able to get a big lead, get him out. In the fourth quarter. You have the Giants. You have the Cowboys. So like. There could be chances to where he's not going to be taking punishment as we go into the playoffs. But obviously the number one, thing that you want to do is get to the playoffs. They have a nice little, buffer here in the division. They have a 2.5 game lead over the Commanders, 3.5 if you want to consider they beat them in the head-to-head. But things are looking good for the Eagles right now. And like we talked about, and I think I said it on Friday, Saquon. Imagine if Saquon would have played with the Eagles or a team like that has an offensive line like the Eagles from the beginning of his career. Like he would be a no doubt about it Hall of Famer. And look, everybody knows how I feel about Penn State. I can't stand them. They're all I just hate Penn State with a passion. I don't like having Penn State players on the Eagles. I hate it when we drafted I shouldn't say I hate it when we drafted, but like when we drafted the year we drafted Miles Sanders and the defensive end, like. We just kept bringing all these Penn State guys in. Man, he has been worth every penny plus more. And it's funny, like we talk about how he I think he leads the NFL in being tackled at the 1. He was smart. He's like, I'm going to just take a 70 because I'm not going to get tackled at the 1 and let Jalen, even though I could have used the tush push touchdown to help my parlay. I'm not going to allow that to take away from my touchdowns, but he had an outstanding day, and I apologize for cutting you off.
And I mean, it's kind of amazing that Saquon Barkley he doesn't have any incentives based around touchdowns. He does have them all based around Super Bowl, like play each round of the playoffs. first team,
Yards.
All-Pro, Pro Bowl, blah, blah, blah. Plus, he has 1,500 scrimmage yards in 2,000, which last night he cashed in on his first 250K because that was 1,500 scrimmage yards he passed over last night. And obviously 2,000, barring anything crazy that we would not want to see because it would be an injury. He's going to make 2,000 in probably the next, I'll say 3 games. I mean, he's only, it was 370 something yards away. Like I'm saying 3 to be generous, but I think it could be sooner. So,
I mean, with the Ravens, with the way the Ravens play defense and the Panthers, you could be sooner.
Exactly. So, I mean, and there's so much talk about, is he an MVP candidate? And obviously he's in the discussion. I think it's personally a 2-horse race. It's Josh Allen. It's Saquon Barkley. Patrick Mahomes is not having a good season. None of the other, Lamar Jackson's having a good season, but he's stumbling. But everybody's saying he has to break, the scrimmage or the rushing yard record, which is 2,100 and whatever. And if you break, but the worst part is if he breaks that record, I promise you he's still not getting the MVP. But when you talk about the most valuable player, if you look at the most valuable player on their team, this Eagles team this year would not look anywhere as close to what it is today without Saquon Barkley.
Well, I mean,
0.
I don't know, because the Eagles' losses came without A.J. Brown, and obviously they haven't played without Saquon yet. But, they still were able – we can go over the last couple of years with Miles Sanders. He had over 1,000 yards rushes. Now, I'm not comparing these running backs to Saquon. Saquon is better. So I know, but Miles Sanders, they were still able to win games with Miles Sanders running the football. With DeAndre Swift, when they gave him the opportunity, they were able to win games running the football. But the Eagles do look different without A.J. Brown. They can't pass the ball, literally, without A.J. Brown. Now, I know they did it in the Saints game when, at the end of the game with the mesh rock getting it to Dallas Goedert. It's tough because I do think it's and Lane Johnson, we know what they look like without Lane Johnson too. So it's crazy. You look at all levels of this team. You get the quarterback. How would the Eagles offense look with Kenny Pickett back there? Who knows? How would it look without Saquon? And it'd have to be Kenny Gainwell leading the way. Who knows? He did have a nice touchdown run. We know what it looks like without A.J. Brown. The passing game is almost non-existent. We know what it looks like without Lane Johnson. The Eagles win a third of their games without Lane Johnson, but win close to 2/3 of their games or something like that. My numbers might be off a little bit with Lane Johnson. So it's just when you look at all levels of the team of importance on the offensive side of the ball, you can name 3, 4, 5 different guys. That's crazy. But at this very moment, who's playing the best? It's hard to deny that it's Saquon. The one thing I do like, I think it was the Eagles put out there was a video, and Saquon going up to all the offensive linemen saying, "We broke the record. We broke Shady's record." That's awesome. That he doesn't think he's not a me player. And I think he's realizing he didn't have this type of help in New York or in New Jersey, I should say, with the Giants in terms of the offensive line. And he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing in Philly without the offensive line that he has in front of him. And those guys were road graders yesterday. Bunch of videos, Baldy putting them out. There's a lot of videos going around. Landon Dickerson throwing linebackers out the way. Mekhi Becton throwing linebackers. Jordan Mailata. It's astounding what the offensive line was able to do. That's the best I've seen the offensive line look in a long time.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. When you're run blocking, it becomes a lot easier than when you're pass blocking and you're left to have to go backwards. Offensive lines are so much better when they can go forward. So, I was looking at Saquon Barkley, 49 snaps, and he had he rushed 26 times. That's some pretty astounding numbers. On his own, he ran the ball over 50% of the time based on his own snaps. But when you can get the run game going, like the Eagles got the run game going, that makes an offensive lineman's life so much easier when they're capable of just moving forward and not moving backwards very much at all. 22 pass attempts, 15 for 22, of course, for Jalen Hurts for 179 yards. Still a good game. clean game, no turnovers.
And he ran the ball when he needed to.
And he ran the ball when he needed to, and he had some good runs. There's a couple runs that were meh, but of course, I think it was Jalen Hurts' best career rushing game came against the Rams as well. So obviously, we kind of went into this game suspecting that that was going to be something to take advantage of. The Rams ranked really like mid to starting towards the end of the pack in run defense. I did not anticipate that they would be able to absolutely bulldoze them like this. This was it was stunning to watch. It was a thing that, if you're Jeff Stoutland, if you're an offensive line coach, if you're a running backs coach, you take this tape and you roll it for your whole offensive line and your running backs, because Saquon Barkley, it takes a certain running back also to find the holes. We've seen a lot of running backs run right into the back of our offensive linemen. So we've been there, and there's teams that are there right now. But that was just like football 101. You could show of 26 carries, probably 24 of them were with flawless execution. And you could probably show that as an offensive line tape and as a running back tape.
There were multiple runs that Saquon got tripped up or got tackled for maybe a 5-10 yard gain that could have also went 50. Like, he literally could have had 300 plus yards rushing. It was astounding how flawless, like you mentioned, and how easy it just seemed like. He was running fast, but it didn't seem like he was exerting a lot of effort. He was just reading the blocks, making one cut, and going. And it was funny. Coming out at the half, they interviewed Sean McVay, and he was like, we got to get a stop here, and let's get the offense going. First play, 70-yard touchdown run. Like, that was pretty awesome just to see how the Eagles, the one thing the Eagles don't do is they don't shy away from the run. And Saquon's the type of guy that, like, he just needs the reps. Give him the reps, and he's going to break one. And that's what's happened, over the course of this season, over the course of this winning streak. Like, the first half, it's going to be, I'm going to give you a 5-yard run. I'm going to give you a 6-yard run, 3-yard run. And then, boom, he's going to bust one for 25, 30, and then 70 yards. That's what he's done, and that's what's helped this team go a long way. They were, remember, before the bye, they were 2-2. And there were a lot of questions about Sirianni. There were a lot of questions about Jalen Hurts. There were a lot of questions about this team. 7 straight wins since. Have they played the greatest competition? No, they played their schedule. That's all you can ask for. And they've beaten everybody. It doesn't matter how it happens. Just go out there. And Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit, because there are a lot of people out there that still don't think he deserves to be the head coach of this team. Well, this team, as we have said time and time again, they play for him. They love playing for him. Behind closed doors, we don't know how Sirianni acts with the players, but obviously he's doing something right, because the players are just they go out there and they take what he says on a weekly basis and doesn't and go out there and play to their hardest, and you can see it time and time again. And I saw something that Saquon's like, when he first met Sirianni, he's like, I don't know about this guy. But Sirianni's true to himself. He doesn't change who he is. And I think that's what any player, any person likes. They don't want to play for a phony. They want to play for somebody. If you're going to act like this, on the field, don't just act like it on the field. Act like it in regular life. And that's what Sirianni is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the conversation's going to rage on through the rest of this season and into the playoffs. Especially, if we go far into the playoffs, if we get to the Super Bowl, people are going to be like, well, what happens if we let Kellen Moore go? We've had the discussion in previous episodes. Like, what is it Kellen Moore? Is it the offense? And I mean, in a way, Nick Sirianni, he got out of his own way. He stepped out of the way, and it has helped. It has done wonders. But you see players quoting him. You see players talking so highly of him. It really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the outside world is saying. If you have the respect of your team and the respect of your players, and the players are playing for you, unlike, look at the Giants locker room, Malik Neighbors, some of those guys just kind of name dropping Daboll and the issues that are going on. You look around at some other teams, the New York Jets. Obviously, that was, a Woody Johnson 100% decision. But obviously, you see the way that's all going. I mean, the environment's been toxic for the Jets and for quite a while. But, I mean, you see it, though. Like, those teams weren't playing for their coaches. They weren't playing for their coordinators. They were barely playing for themselves. They just – and now you see with Philadelphia that players play for each other. The players play for the coaches. There is such a camaraderie and respect all the way around. And it all begins and comes back to culture. And one of the things is Sirianni was brought in to be, it's going around a lot now. It's called the CEO type coach.
Well, not at first. At first he was brought in to be the offensive guy, but when they kept him, is when they turned him into I don't want to say turned him, but when they kept him is when he became the CEO.
But they knew when they hired him, obviously, that they saw those qualities of a potential CEO type in him, because that's what the type the Eagles, well, Laurie and Howie Roseman like, is a guy that eventually they can get to say yes. And that's why they always seem to go, off the grid with their hires a bit. But, I mean, Nick Sirianni ended up becoming the CEO type guy, just like Dan Campbell. Some of these guys are getting the label, just like Ravens Harbaugh. They get that label of their CEO types because they aren't really good at, Harbaugh's good at special teams, but otherwise, Campbell doesn't really run offense, doesn't run defense. Sirianni tried to run offense, sucked at it. Called a defensive play potentially once or twice, sucked at that. He doesn't really call any plays. So they're the CEO type, and it all starts with this culture is not ingrained solely. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie's built a great, organization, but it starts with the coach. Comes from the coach, those cultures, because things trickle down. But the players don't necessarily listen to Jeffrey Lurie and don't interact with Jeffrey Lurie or Howie Roseman all the time. They interact with the coach. They interact with the coordinators. And so you can't discount when you talk about the culture and the way these guys play. You cannot put a discount on Nick Sirianni, because Nick Sirianni is a large, large, large piece of why that culture is the way it is. Sure, there was issues last year, but it looks like there might have been some certain players in the locker room that were more the issue, because it seemed like there was still a culture there that you wanted to be a part of, but there was some souring within the locker room of certain players towards, Sirianni, towards the team, towards the moment. So you can't knock Nick. Like, you always had to respect the culture and that he was building, and, that he was like an unapologetic coach. But obviously he had to get out of his own way. And as soon as he got out of his own way and he kind of stood in the background and shaved his head, there became
7-0 since shaving his head.
Exactly. So as soon as he did those things, it became such a different world. This Eagles team became such a different team. And it's been impressive to watch. And so you have to give some credit to Nick Sirianni as far as that goes, because he listened to his players. He respected the opinions of some of his leadership players, and he kind of got out of the way, and things have definitely played well for him. And it's kind of a good thing. We talked about Kellen Moore. He struggled to get head coaching jobs. It feels like there's something missing, that a team's not willing to take the shot. And Vic Fangio doesn't want a head coaching job. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this could be the year that we finally see the continuity in our coordinators, and then we don't have to wait 4, 5, 6 weeks for this team to get going. We might get it going right from the get-go with this team. But it was back to the game, like A.J. Brown, we said, what would life be like without Devontae Smith? I mean, having 255 yards and over 300 scrimmage yards from your running back helps. But we saw, it feels like you can probably go without Devontae Smith if you need to. We don't want to, but you can't go without A.J. Brown. We're 8-0 with A.J. Brown in the lineup this year, and our only losses have come without A.J. Brown. So you kind of alluded to that in A.J. Brown, and like when we were talking MVP, we could end up debating the MVP of the Eagles. I think it's still going to come out the same, but you can definitely point out, I don't think there's many teams where you can say, but without this guy, without this player, you don't win games. But you can say that about a lot of guys. I can almost promise without Saquon Barkley, we probably lose games. I mean, Kenny Gainwell, he steps in fine when he needs to, a few too many times per game that we don't need to see. He vultured a Saquon Barkley touchdown this week. But AJ Brown probably can't win without him. Or probably can't. We probably need him to win. Saquon Barkley, same thing. Lane Johnson, same thing. Jalen Carter probably can say the same thing. Jalen Hurts probably say the same thing, especially when you look at our backup QB situation as it stands. So, I mean, you can definitely debate that all around. There are very few teams that you can go up and down and say, when one of these 6 or 7 guys is missing, we're probably losing a football game. That's how vitally important that one of these cogs is to the ultimate wheel and how it works in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Jalen Carter, man. He got double teamed on 70% of the plays yesterday. And you look at the box score, he may not have had all the stats, but he was helping others eat. Milton Williams had 2 sacks. Brandon Graham had a sack. Josh Sweat, I think, had a sack. Him eating double teams, him controlling the line of scrimmage and not allowing the 2-guy guard and center to get to the linebackers, help Nakobe Dean get a sack. It helps Zach Baum be able to go sideline to sideline. So he deserves a world of credit for his play. Cooper DeJean.
22 of 54 he was double teamed on. 22 of 54 snaps. But I guess if you go only based on pass rush, then it was 22 of 38.
There we go. That makes more sense. Cooper DeJean was lined up with Cooper Kupp for most of the game. Cooper Kupp, he caught a touchdown late. I'm hoping that wasn't really on Q.
It wasn't on DeJean.
I know it wasn't on DeJean. I'm hoping it will. I know Q was kind of in coverage, but I don't know if that was somebody else was supposed to be in coverage, because that would stay.
It was it was Isaiah Rodgers and Sidney Brown were the 2 that were based on PFF were accounted for touchdowns allowed. So it was not on Q.
I'm assuming because Q was on Cup, but I'm guessing, and Sidney Brown came over late, so I'm guessing that's why whatever it was. But what the job he did on him, and then I kept calling for Quinyon to go on Puka Nacua, because Nacua, they kept running the same route with him. They would do a bootleg, and he would come across, and he would get a short pass and then turn it upfield. And Slay couldn't stay with him.
Rogers couldn't
stay with him. I don't know why it took so long for especially when Slay went out the game, move Quinyon all over the field. And I get it. Rogers coming in kind of cold. We'll see what happens this week. If with the concussion protocol, it's tough for somebody to come back. So if Slay doesn't play, Isaiah Rodgers will get the start, and maybe being able to know that throughout the entire week that you're going to be on the field will definitely help him, because we saw that in the Cincinnati game when he was able to tip a pass to CJ GJ. But yeah, Cooper DeJean did an outstanding job in a very, very tough matchup with Cooper Kupp. And when you don't hear a corner's name, that's good. Barely heard Quinyon Mitchell's name, unless they were just talking about just the type of season that he was having. Barely heard Cooper DeJean's name. Didn't really hear the safeties' names either. And again, that's a good thing. The front four did their job. The linebackers did their job. Nakobe Dean had a hell of a game, another sack. The way he ran over Kyron Williams was ridiculous. Kyron Williams probably looked like a deer in the headlights. I can only imagine if there was a camera footage of from Nakobe's point of view of running right at Kyron Williams. But yeah, just all around team. This may have been the best win all around team effort by the Eagles this season so far.
Yeah, and I mean, I went into it. I was pretty rough on the Rams. During our preview episode, I probably called them a middle of the pack team or a middle-in team 4 or 5 times. And I wrapped it up by giving my prediction and saying it as well. But I mean, maybe it's because of who they were against. Like the Eagles and the Lions seem to be the elite of the elite in the NFC. Everybody wishes they were matched up at some point this season because we might not get that matchup depending on what happens in the playoffs. You never know what can happen in the playoffs. I think when I was watching today, because they were talking about the Chiefs and one-score games, and they said it doesn't matter once it gets to the playoffs. And they said over the last 10 postseasons, 52 or 54% of games have been decided by one score or less. So you never know what that one score means. We've been on the wrong side of it for the Eagles. Many teams have been on the wrong side of the one score. We've been on the right side of the one score. So I hope we get to see that Lions versus Eagles matchup, but you just never know what's going to happen come playoff time. There's still quite a bit of season to play. But defensively, all around, it was just such a special thing to watch. Jalen Carter, I hate to bring up penalties and talking about penalties in a game that was so positive for us that we shouldn't even have to bring them up.
The refs were terrible.
The refs were terrible. First of all, they need to learn what pass interference is. Those were stuff. I think I put it in our EOP chat. I don't think I've ever seen so many ticky-tacky pass interference calls happen to one team in a game. I think it happened 3 times, and that was 3 too many. You see it once, max twice, and twice is bad luck. But to see it 3 times where they somehow see something in the play, and the fact that they have to go to the rules analyst on each one to evaluate it tells you all you need to know, that there was a little too much being called there from the ref's perspective. I mean, when you think about it, and I'm not taking away points from the Rams. They got the points that they got. The score is probably not even 37-20 if it isn't for a couple of those PIs.
The Rams were gifted 2 touchdowns. Let's be
Absolutely.
honest.
Would they have maybe gotten one of them? Probably. But I feel like this probably could have even been 37-14, even worse.
The first drive of the game for the Rams, they did a good job of moving the ball up until Isaiah Rodgers caused the fumble on Kyren Williams. Who knows what would happen if they would have scored right then and there. Because the Eagles get the ball, they only get a field goal.
And that was almost a missed call.
Yeah,
they
that was crazy.
That one by a mile.
Sirianni should not have had to use the challenge.
When they blow the whistle dead, the ball, Kyren didn't even have a ball, and he didn't even have knees on the ground. I was floored that there's probably 2 refs within 20 yards of that play, and neither of them saw that the ball was clearly out of Kyren Williams. That started the idea of knowing that it was going to be a rough game from a reffing perspective. And I hate to talk about the refs because it was a really good game. And all that it would have done was made the Rams defeat even worse than the 37-20 it was. But I know Baldy put out some videos of Jalen Carter and the holds that teams get away with. And he's not even trying to sell them very much. By the end of it, he's trying to sell a couple of them, but he's not even trying to sell the holds. You need to get that under control because you're in a way and I know teams people will say Aaron Donald was held. You can call a hold every single time. All you need to do is call one hold and show that you're watching those guys. You're watching Jalen Carter, and that's all it takes. And then they will potentially stop doing it as much. Because right now, they're just week after week after week, multiple times per game. Jalen Carter is getting held by sometimes 2 people. The video Baldy had, it was a hold from the minute Jalen Carter came out of his stance until the ball left Matthew Stafford's hands. The video was 5 seconds long, and the entire play was an offensive lineman holding Jalen Carter. So, that speaks to just how dominant Jalen Carter is, just how much of a game changer Jalen Carter is. And why, he's too young to say it, but why he probably will start to draw as his career rolls on Aaron Donald comparisons, because he immediately from snap 1 till snap, he played 54 snaps. So till snap 54, he commanded multiple offensive linemen's attention for almost every single snap. And that helps to draw some attention away. And like you said, Milton Williams, massive game. I did 2 sacks for him, huge game. Because we have been talking about Milton Williams every week and saying he's one of those guys, Williams and Sweat, who wants a contract extension, who wants to stay in Philadelphia, who is Howie going to pay? And Milton Williams needed a game like this. He needs a couple more games like this to get in Howie's good graces and to get paid, because I would rather Milton Williams back over Josh Sweat. Mm-hmm. I think Williams can be a game changer, especially lining up beside Jalen Carter.
Yeah, I agree. And I know they like Moro Jomo and Jordan Davis. While his numbers aren't there, he helps against the run. Let's be honest. Like, there's a reason the Eagles are still one of the better run defenses in the league, and Jordan Davis does have an impact in that. But like, looking at all levels of the defense, like, you have a stud in Jalen Carter on the line. Zach Bond has a chance to be all-pro at the linebacker position, and Quinyon Mitchell has a chance to be all-pro in the secondary. Like, let's be real, the way he's been playing. Who would have thunk that the Eagles, back seven would be the strength of the defense? The Eagles are a team that likes to build from the lines out, but it took a little bit of time for the defensive line of the Eagles to get going. It does hurt that Brandon Graham is going to be out. Somebody's going to have to step up. Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith. Will they move Milton Williams out? Bryce Huff isn't going to be back for another 3 or 4 weeks, hopefully. Teron Jackson's on the practice squad. You have to think that he's going to be called up. I don't know who would be available for them to be. Like, JPP is available. Jason Pierre-Paul.
I was looking. It's pretty barren wasteland of
JPP is available. Yannick Ngakoue was available, but he's on the Patriots now. I was calling for that pickup when the Ravens released him.
Are we certain how he's even got making a move in his deck of cards on this one? I don't think he does. I think he's content with giving Jalix Hunt a run. I think he's content with giving some other guys a run.
You do that, but when you call Teron Jackson up from the practice squad, I think you would bring in a defensive end to take his spot on the practice squad just in case.
And I mean, we were already playing. Brandon Graham's 36 years old. And then you have JPP, what's JPP, 32, 33 years old? There's no reason to believe JPP. I mean, it was reported, a few weeks back, a name to watch down the stretch. He's in game shape. He's ready to sign with the team that wants to give him a chance. You're not going to expect him to come and take on the Brandon Graham role. Brandon Graham played 29 snaps. But if you can get a guy who can help complement the defensive line for a while, for 15, 20 snaps a game at the most, like a JPP makes sense. And I hope that in Howie's deck of cards is, I'm going to sign a free agent. I'm going to sign some defensive end, because I know that we don't have the solve in-house. That's not to discount Jalix Hunt, but Jalix Hunt was not drafted to be a player who was going to take on a prominent role right away. And then you got Bryce Huff, who was supposed to be in that prominent role, and he's going to be out. They said, to me, I don't think Bryce Huff's going to be back in the regular season. They were making it sound like it was going to be playoffs that he'd be back for. So I don't even think we see Bryce Huff back. So, I mean, I feel like
I wonder at this point, after the 4 weeks are up, they throw a club on his hands if they need him. Like, we'll obviously see what happens over the next couple of weeks without Brandon Graham. If they get desperate enough, be like, I know it's a risk, but we've seen a bunch of guys go out there and with a club on their hand, go out there and play.
JPP is one of them. Well, he blew off his thumb and had a club on his hand.
Yeah, he blew off his fingers. That was for a different reason. But yeah, so it does suck too. With this potentially being Brandon Graham's last year, it's such a terrible way to go out. And the way he was playing, who knows? He probably could have come back next year. We'll see if he has that in him. We know he has that in him. We'll see if he wants to go through. Obviously, you have to go through rehab. We'll see how he's feeling by the end of the year, depending on how the season ends for the Eagles. Like, the Eagles have a motto now: "Win it for BG." Let's go out there. Man, remember 2017? Was it Lane Johnson that was carrying out Jason Peters' jersey when they came out at the Super Bowl? Who's going to be carrying Brandon Graham's jersey in New Orleans if the Eagles are in the Super Bowl? It wouldn't shock me if BG, the type of guy that he is, If the Eagles make the Super Bowl, it wouldn't shock me if he played. It wouldn't shock me one bit if he tried to come back.
It does. I did when I saw the injury, I looked it up, and it is 6 months at the back end. Like if you're in good shape and stuff, you might be able to push yourself.
November, it's December.
I mean, it would
January,
be 3 months.
3 months. That would be
it would be a pretty elite move by Brandon Graham, and maybe he just want to go just to say, I want to be on that, but I want to be given a ring for if I'm not out there playing in that Super Bowl. But I mean, he did more than enough. I mean, you can argue at this point he's the best edge on the team this year. Easily. And I don't even know if anyone's going to be able to catch him to be better for the rest of the year. But we need someone to step up and be better than Brandon Graham's current numbers. Because at this point, like Josh Sweat, this is earn your money, earn your pay. We already know you can go out and get paid, but earn the respect of Howie to pay you and keep you here in Philadelphia. And then like Jalen Hunt, this is a good opportunity to like take that step up and show I'm not just a developmental guy. I got things I can do to help you today. And I mean, we saw some promise in Jalen Hunt. I mean, if you were focused on Jalen Hunt during the Rams game, there's promise there. There's flashes. We know there's elite athleticism there. So now it's just about refining the game. And as each week goes and he gets more NFL looks, hopefully that refining continues to happen. He's got the right coaching staff to maybe get him in the spot he needs to be to really help this defense.
And a guy like Nolan Smith and a guy like Jalen Hunt with their background, like Hunt was a safety, I think, before moving up a level, and with the speed that Nolan Smith has, these two guys could be somebody to kind of keep an eye out this week against the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, who we know likes to run. Maybe get somebody with speed to be able to run them down. But that we'll definitely talk about that later this week on Friday, I think. But a guy that I'm going to, again, owe an apology to, Vic Fangio. My God, the way he has this defense playing. Again, at the beginning of the year or, throughout the first month of the season, I thought he was washed. I thought he was cooked. I thought just like his defensive mentality was too old school. Well, man, he has this young defense playing out of their mind right now. They're a top 5 defense right now. Will they finish top 5? Who knows? But right now, just the way that they're playing, for the 7th straight week, they've held their opponent under 300 yards of total offense. No coincidence that they're all wins, by the way. But they've just been really dominant on the defensive side of the ball. CJ had another big hit. Everybody's flying to the ball. You see multiple Eagles jerseys going wherever the ball is. They're playing outstanding, and they don't allow the slow starts by the offense to affect the defense. And the defense may give up a score early, but the adjustments that they make throughout the game are astounding, and Vic Fangio deserves a ton of credit for what he's been able to do with this defense.
Yeah, I mean, the first quarter, I'm not gonna lie, I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and I was like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be a close game. It's gonna keep me there on the edge of my seat for the rest of the night. And they ended up adjusting, and they ended up, I mean, was it frustrating at times with Slay and Rodgers and Puka Nacua? Definitely. But the fact that they couldn't do anything else, they couldn't go anywhere else, was such a testament. Kyron Williams, we spoke about it. He's a good offensive weapon, and they made him nearly non-existent. He ended up fumbling the ball. He ended up getting absolutely pancaked on a play by Nolan Smith. He just did not look good and did not look the part that we would have expected. And that all goes to, speaking to this defense. This defense did good on every single level, and it's exactly the type of game that we needed. All the leading up to this, when we had 5 wins in a row, was, oh, you just beat that team. Oh, you just beat that team. Mm-hmm. Oh, you just beat that team. And then, you can only play the schedule that's in front of you. And, we didn't want T. Higgins. Well, we're fine with it, but we didn't want T. Higgins to be out in that game. Nobody wants a player to miss a game. We didn't want Dak Prescott. We did, but we didn't want Dak Prescott to miss that game because then it's just an excuse. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we beat them and the Commanders didn't. So, but there's you don't want these players to be out. So beating the Commanders at full strength and beating the Rams essentially at full strength were huge proven opportunities for the Eagles to say, okay, you think, okay, you just want to say, oh, it's just them. It's just them. It's just them. It's just them. Well, here we go. We were on upset alert against the Rams all week. There was, you go through a line of 7 people and it was one or two guys who were like, it's going to be an upset. Here's why. And the Eagles just dominated offensively, defensively. And there continues to be so much promise in this team. And we all want to see it. The Lions, number 1 offense versus the Eagles, number 5 on the year, but since the bye week, I think they're the number 1 defense since the bye week that they had. So basically, number 1 versus number 1.
2 smash mouth offenses.
2 smash mouth, yeah, because you got they're running. It's a beautiful thing to see Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, that 1-2 combination. Then the Saquon Barkley show in Philadelphia. And some of the players that are on each team and the personalities that they have, it would just be the ultimate matchup to see. And it would be, it could spark a rivalry for years to come if both of these teams continue to remain at the top of the NFC. But you did mention it earlier in the episode, being 2.5 games up in the NFC East this late in the season. And I know we still got 7 weeks left in the season, but this is huge. The Commanders, like you said, we own one of those initial tiebreakers that forces them to have to finish the year strong and win 4 games and have the Eagles lose 4 games and then be level the rest of the way. And that just doesn't seem like it's going to happen for the Eagles. So it's huge.
Let's not say that. We didn't think it was going to happen last year.
Well, this is true. We don't want to overreact, but I mean, you kind of said it yesterday too, and it as a joke, but with some truth to it, that the Eagles could have the NFCs wrapped up by Christmas. I mean, if you can win the next 2 weeks, you could, even one of these weeks, you could probably and see where the Cowboys aren't catching up. It's about, the Commanders. If the Commanders lose another week and we win another week, it almost becomes near impossible for the Commanders to make up that deficit with what's left of the season. So it was huge.
And again, the rest of the schedule sets up well for the Eagles. They don't have to get on a plane. Baltimore, train ride. Washington, DC, train ride.
Carolina.
Another 4 games, home.
Play here, home, yep.
Carolina, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and the Giants are all here. So they don't have to get on a plane. This schedule sets up beautifully for the Eagles right now. Tough games, yes. Baltimore is going to be a tough game. Pittsburgh is going to be a tough game. Washington's going to be a tough game. But the fact that they don't have to get on a plane, it's a short travel. It's a 2-hour ride to Baltimore and DC, and then the other teams have to come here. And while the Panthers did play the Chiefs tough yesterday, they're still the Panthers. So the way that the Eagles have this schedule set up, being 9-2. They have everything they want in front of them. You don't want to look past opponents, obviously, but like you mentioned, that everything is boiling down to January 26th or whatever the day would be. Eagles, Lions, NFC Championship game. Just determine our location to be determined. Obviously, we would love to get Jared Goff out of a dome, get Detroit out of a dome, but both teams are built to play
in any situation,
in any weather.
And I think I saw somebody broke down the path for the Eagles and the Lions, and the path is pretty tough for the Eagles to get that number 1 seed. I think they need the Lions to lose. I think it's this week to Green Bay, and then a bunch of other things. But the Green Bay loss has to happen. That common opponent was a major one.
If you think about what the Lions schedule, Green Bay, tough. Vikings, tough. Bills, obviously an AFC team, but tough. The Niners could potentially be tough. I think that the Niners could be battling for something. So they do have a bunch of tough games left as well. They're not going to lose all of them, obviously. But could they get knocked off here, knocked off there? They have Chicago, I think a couple of times, including this week on Thanksgiving. again, they're not going to lose all these games, but these are opponents that could hopefully help the Eagles out. And
they'll play them tough. Divisional opponents play you tough no matter what. You could be 10-0 against a team that's 0-10, and it doesn't even matter. That 0-10 team, if they're in your division, will give you a run every time. It's crazy how it works, but it's just – and sometimes you play up just like you play down to the level of your competition. That's why it feels like the Chiefs always get the best opponent, whether it's the Carolina Panthers, you get the best effort of the Carolina Panthers for that week out of 17 weeks, because everybody wants to try and beat them. Everyone wants that opportunity to beat the top team, the penultimate team in the whole NFL, and beating Patrick Mahomes and stuff. And it's so, and maybe people are, maybe some teams are going to look at the Eagles like that. And hopefully some teams are looking at the line. I mean, it doesn't feel like it, but now they're hitting a tougher stretch. So maybe some of the Lions opponents will play them tougher and not get beat by 5 or 6 scores. But you would hope that, you get some help from Green Bay, you get some help from Chicago, you get some help from Minnesota. You don't want too much help from Minnesota because they're right up there too. I think they're 8. They only have 3 losses.
I think they're
3 losses. So you don't want too much help from Minnesota. That'll be a tough game to choose who to cheer for. You really have to look down the matters. And
I think Sam Darnold is worse than Jared Goff, so I would root for Minnesota. I don't think Sam Darnold can beat this team.
No, I think that, if there's a team that's probably
the Vikings
fraudulent in a way, I would probably say it would be the Minnesota Vikings. But
the Vikings are 9-2. The Lions are the NFC North is crazy. Lions 10-1, Vikings 9-2, Packers 8-3. Then you see the NFC West: Seahawks and Cardinals 6-5, Rams and Niners 5-6. NFC North 6-5 Atlanta, 5-6 Tampa, 4-7 New Orleans, 3-8.
That NFC South is so ugly.
Every
year it's so gross.
It's remember we used to call it the NFC least. Well, when it came to terms to the East, yeah, no, that South is such a bad division. So whoever wins the South will be the 4 seed. You think one team is coming out of the South, one team probably coming out of the West. Potentially 3 coming out of the North, and maybe 2 out of the East if Washington doesn't stumble, which is quite possible.
They're stumbling now.
They really are. 3 straight losses for them, and they have Washington.
And that Cowboys one's tough. After you watch what the Eagles did to that very similar Cowboys team 2 weeks prior, and then you come out and you lose to the Eagles, and then you play like you do in that game. And I mean, I guess in a way, completely wasting a huge Terry McLaurin touchdown with that missed extra point, that doesn't help at all.
That was terrible defense by Dallas too.
It was Dallas was saying, take this game from us, and then your kicker goes and just completely
Washington
blows.
Has Tennessee this week too, and Tennessee just beat Houston, who's also who the heck knows what's going on with Houston. So
it's so weird, isn't it? Just weird. The NFL. Somebody mentioned it. The NFL's drunk, and it feels like it because it's just the crazy.
I said that the Washington Dallas game was drunk. That was crazy. But yeah, so again, the Eagles 37-20 winners over the Rams. I picked the Rams to win. You picked the Eagles to win. You're only a game behind me now. I think I'm 7-4, and you are 6. Yep, I'm 7-4. You're 6-5. We have the Eagles and the Ravens this week. Should be a great game. I should be in attendance. I'm almost positive I'll be there. Should be so much fun. I can't wait. I want to see Lamar Jackson in live. That's going to be an in-all experience. I think just the type of player that he is. Just to see Lamar Jackson, it should be a fun time. Should be a great game. And you have Derrick Henry versus, obviously they don't face each other, but the Derrick Henry factor versus the Saquon Barkley factor. Tonight's game, the Chargers and the Ravens should be interesting just to see how the Ravens come out.
The Harbaugh Bowl.
Yeah, in the Harbaugh Bowl. Chargers defense.
I mean, the Chargers have been good. Like
the Chargers don't charger anymore.
No, it's funny how when you get the right coach in the building, how they suddenly don't charge her anymore. But I mean, it's going to definitely be a really good game tonight too. I mean, I kind of have a lean towards the Chargers just because like they're playing well, they're doing good. You kind of like the underdog. You like the underdog story as long as it's not against your team. So
the Eagles go back out to LA next year, by the way, to face the Chargers, unless it's an overseas game. So that should be another LA takeover for Philly fans.
They love it. They love those opportunities to just take over stadiums.
Which next year will be tough because you have the LA game. They also go to Kansas City. It's tough to take over Kansas City. Go to Green Bay. Tough to take over Green Bay. So next year should be interesting to see how Philly fans travel to some of these iconic places that, especially with fan bases that don't allow you to kind of overtake the stadium, unlike LA. Or Washington or Jersey. Like there's a bunch of places that Philly fans overtake. But, Green Bay, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, they don't play Pittsburgh next year. They do this year in Philly. But like they're the type of locations that it's tough as an opposing fan to get in there and make yourself known. But we'll see what happens. I'm intrigued to see how many Eagles fans will be in Baltimore this weekend. That should be an intriguing experience.
Yeah, you'll have to be check out the X feed. LJ will be over there sharing some pictures, maybe.
Hopefully, if my phone doesn't die and I get service. It's tough when you're in a stadium with 50,000-60,000 other people that are also trying to,
do the same thing.
Stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
We might have delayed footage, but it'll get there.
Hopefully. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's edition of the Victory Green Hour, as the Philadelphia Eagles are now 9-2, 2.5 games up in the NFC East, and set to do battle with the Baltimore Ravens this Sunday. We will be back on probably Friday. It's after Thanksgiving. We'll see if
Thanksgiving for you.
Well, that's true.
I don't care.
We'll see if the tryptophan hits me and how I'm feeling on Friday. No, I'm kidding. On Friday. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRaw54. And follow the Eagles Pin Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pin Pool Network. Crabby old man, good show, guys. Sorry I had nothing to add. No worries, man. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in live. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Friday to get you set for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens right here on the Kelly Green Hour.